Okay, I've set up Conquistador completely. My boxes on top of it have done no good. These stupid hard... The old hard maps that Avalon Hill made were fine. The kind of Monopoly style ones with a crease in the middle. Yeah, the crease was annoying great. They tried this clever version to try to get something that laid flatter, and it's never worked. And sometimes even right at the very beginning when you buy a game, not that you can buy them anymore, they were warped. Now I have not, there's a similar map style to the GMT hard maps in terms of being in one piece and it all folds together. I have not seen one that had a problem. The AH maps with their kind of cardboard were prone to warping. This one was actually in pretty good shape when I first got it, I think, but, you know, age definitely has an effect on it, an effect that you don't see on the paper maps. I could throw a piece of plexiglass over it. I don't think it's too important in this game. There aren't going to be a lot of counters around everywhere. Yeah, it's kind of funny. The only thing I use plexiglass for are mounted maps, right? Because it's the only way to cope with them. The worst of all these situations was with, and it's a real pity because it's a fantastic game, but Struggle of Nations up there. My map is in pieces because basically every little quarter, I backfold these to try to make them better. Well, Avalon Hill's response was, where would anybody get the idea to do that? Well, it was a pretty common thing with paper maps, but okay. I mean, SPI actually tells you to do it. But the Avalon Hill maps would not lay flat. There's nothing you can do. I mean, I had a box with that's all paper. It's fairly heavy, you know, maybe 20 pounds or something. A couple of games on top of it, etc. It just doesn't budge it, you know. I mean, you've got to leave this thing, I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. Also want to kind of a thank you out to a member over at Board Game Geek. Emailed me a PDF. I'm not going to reveal anything because it's probably technically illegal still. Though who knows who has the rights to this. But of the Avalon Hill rules, I didn't have a chance to look them over completely. I don't really want to do that. But I was able to fish out a couple of things, and I'm right about a couple of things that I think I'm going to play with. One is, I am right about, I'm going to remove Person, the naval capacity. You can do port invasions in the Avalon Hill version the way that I suggested. You don't need an explorer to do it. That makes sense. How big is sense? I don't know. There might be small colonies that wouldn't be known, especially early in the game. I kind of wanted to trigger it, and I may do this. Make it turn 8 when you can first start doing this. When the coastlines are mapped out enough, when everybody really kind of who's in the area knows where the other guy's civilizations and locations are. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. That doesn't really affect anyone too terribly anyhow. It's late in the game that you want to make those moves. And explorers are still important because when you attack a port with a naval invasion, they're doubled. If you can land next to, let's assume this is well, here's one. Let's assume you move next to it, then you can attack it during your land movement and take it out. It doesn't give you the same flexibility and mobility that naval attacks do. You can sail in, grab a port, and then leave in a naval invasion. But for the most part, if you want to actually do a real invasion, you probably don't want to do it with a naval invasion. You want to land on the territory nearby and attack it directly from land where you don't face doubled enemies. What I did have in there was the rules, which I don't think are in here, for the counters for the extra starred cities. I believe this is the very first time that I've ever played with these. I never liked them for one reason. You got these fixed locations on the map, and in particular Cuzco had special rules applying to it, which I'm going to keep in place for that one location. If you happen to have a city there, that's great. But the reason that I never really played with them was I had this fear of kind of unbalancing things with them, or I don't know. They just disturbed me in a lot of ways. Also because the stars are already on the map and they might confuse me. So here's what's going to happen. Each player in turn, in initiative order, is going to get to place one of these and then another one after. We'll go around once and then we'll go around again. The thinking behind placing them. Yeah, I haven't gotten anywhere yet, right? I'm so fucking long-winded. The thinking behind placing them has to do with, well, what is your position early in the game? And in order to determine that, well, you have to look at what the initiative order is going to be. So Portugal and Spain both have A monarchs. That gives them 4 times. So we're looking at almost 800 for the 2 of them. That means they get to go early. In the early stages of the game, they're going to have the ability to try to find these cities. So they probably want to put them in easy-to-reach locations. Of course, they may want to put them in more accessible locations, but we'll touch on that in a moment. England has a B. That's 3 times. They're going to be in the 700s. They're going to get the 3rd option. They may not feel like they want to put one right out in the open. And France, worst of all, has the least opportunity. The Spanish are going to have the most with their conquistadors, etc. So they have kind of a desire to put them in easy to reach but hard to conquer territories like the Incan Empire and the Aztec Empire. What's wrong with all this? Well, what's wrong with it is the great treasure city may end up someplace stupid, easy to get, like Venezuela, with no real native population. That's my worry with it. But that's okay. So I'm going to have a Spanish one go out, and they're going to drop one right here in Tenochtitlan. And yes, I'm going to end up covering all the stars just because it makes me happy. The next one is the Portuguese. The Portuguese don't have a lot of military ability. They are going to throw one. They have this ability to get in easily. They're going to push one here at the mouth of the Amazon in Brazil. Next is the English. The English don't want to be too painful about where they pick. They don't necessarily want it to have a lot of wealth. They're going to stick one up here in the Great Lakes. The French are interested in making it very difficult. They're going to put one up here in the northwest. I don't know if there's a limitation on how close they can be together. Let me look up in the rules. Yeah, they literally can be placed anywhere. So since I've done 4 of them, we'd be on the Spanish. Now, they might want to throw another one in the Aztec Empire. There's strong reason for that, for them. I'm not going to do that because I think that's cheap. I'm going to throw one over in Cusco, although that's not necessarily easy for them to get. The Rio de Plata is interesting for them. Portugal, well, I don't want to put one in Chichen Itza, but I feel compelled to. Like, Portugal wouldn't put one there, I don't think, the way I'm thinking right now. That puts it on the English. The English kind of want to put one somewhere not terribly easy to reach. We'll throw it about out here in the Rocky. Now we'll throw it in the Midwest Plateau. That's going to be rough to get to, and might be something they're looking at in the long term. Now it's the French, and the French have a problem in that they don't have someplace cool they want to put it. Now this is where we get goofy, right? We're gonna throw it. We'll throw it out in California, back here. Great idea. Well, no, but there's no reason California might not be, more easily reached than it is. I'm gonna remove Person from the game, and we're going to start the beginning. I'll cut for a bit. And as always, I'm going to go into a lot of detail early in the game and then kind of go into a lot of glossing over as we get later on. But I think it's important to kind of show how things go. So the first thing that we hit in the sequence of play is the random events segment. And each country gets to do this. Now, I'm going to do this again in initiative order, starting with the Spaniards. It doesn't really matter. The red die will be the first die coming down this side. And we'll see what we get here. So we get a 3 and a taxation, or a random event roll of 2. That 3, with a monarch rating of A, says I get 25 bucks in taxes. Now that's 50 quick victory points. So that's one of the things you got to always kind of keep in mind in this game, is what I'm spending. It had better be worth, at least in the long run, 2 victory points per buck that I spent. Or yeah, it's two per ducat. 2 victory points per buck I spend. If I'm spending a lot on a discovery or something, it's not worth it if I'm not getting that. Now, if I'm establishing a position on the board that could get me, what, 150 victory points, I think it is, for a territory, well, that's a different situation, because there, I still don't want to be spending more than I'm going to get, but it's a worthwhile play. Now, the final thing I do is I look here, and I look 3 to 2. That gets me 4. What is 4? Well, this is tricky, but I'm going to go with these costly European war drains treasury. Hopefully, I have the right ones here. There is some weirdness going on here, and I may have to look in the old rules and dig up the changes there. Reduce the national treasury by 50 ducats, or reduce to 0 if you're less. Well, that wasn't good. And you can see, you know, I mean, no matter what you're doing, bad stuff can just happen at random to you. This is not a game where you want to be completely reliant on, I can think the best moves out at any time. The reason, in addition to this, is there's the diplomacy factor. So even though there's a lot of randomness going on, well, that randomness affects your position, so you might be able to negotiate or whatever better. Let's go to our second country, Portugal. Portugal gets a 6. They have a monarch rating of A. They only get 15 bucks. Oh, I forgot to throw out colonists. Oh, boy. I had 25 bucks. I think I got 4 Spanish colonists. Now, one thing you'll notice, Spain already has a ship out here. They also already have a little dude here. So here, I rolled a 6. I am going to get 7 Portuguese colonists. There's a mixture here. Which do you want better? Now, obviously, if you're not going to colonize, you don't really care about colonists. And early in the game like this, colonists aren't necessarily that valuable. Remember, they don't bring in they probably barely bring in their value. However, establishing them is useful, and this is the only way you get the suckers. So now 6 to 5, that gives me a 3. That's going to be decreased interest in overseas expansion. That doesn't sound good. His monarch multiplier goes down by 1. Now, I got to remember that somehow. I'm going to put a little -1 next to the Portuguese here, just to try to remind me for this turn. Now we go to our next, which is the English. Now they only have a B monarch, so they're going to get 40 ducats. You say ducat, I say ducat. Only 2 colonists. That may mean it's not worth colonizing. On the other hand, if you're sending an expedition, you might as well drop some people off, huh? I don't know. And 1-4 is 7. Graft and corruption rife. Uh-oh. That's a bad event. There it is. For this turn only, the player doubles the expense of all purchases and all maintenance. That means landing these guys costs you more than it would normally. It also means, whatever I buy is going to cost more. This may be a turn to pass for the English. It feels goofy to do so. You got an explorer. Why not build your ships? Why not do that? Well, ships are expensive. They're real expensive. So at $4 each, well, if that's doubled, it's $8 each. That's 16 victory points a pop. What am I going to discover? And by the way, the Spaniards start out with some points for discovering the New World, which is not listed. It's going to be in the trust me, the photocopy does not make it easy at all. It's somewhere. I gotta find it. They got like, I think it's 125 victory points for that. So this is the thing. When I talk about the balance, I think I said this in the intro. Spain starts out with all the advantages. They got all this stuff. They've got an A monarch. Their tables are the same as everyone else's. They have everything. Everybody's got to kind of do some work to get against them. You've got to fight against Spain, or else they will just, win by default. So I've got to note that somewhere. And I'll put that, I'm going to have to keep notes somewhere other than just these. Maybe kind of keep notes like I did in Europe Universalis. And now our final is the French, and we haven't gotten very far at all in the turn, but turns usually go very quickly, like everybody could be doing this at the same time. There's a lot of turns though, 21. 4, I've got a Sea Monarch, that only gives me $15. 5 French colonists, and number 15 is El Dorado. Well, that's not going to affect them, but we'll touch on it just to let you see what some of the events can be like, because I won't have this book on the table most of the time. The requirements are the same as Area 14, Panama and Venezuela, Amazon, Incan Empire, and you have 10 years, 2 turns to do it. Okay, how does this work? Well, if you have units in those locations that I listed, you must at some time pass through all those areas. 3 soldier detachments must participate. If you're Spanish, there has to be a conquistador and a missionary. And you can do anything else you like during the expedition. If you fail, you lose 100 victory points. So if you're in the area, you have to search for this. This is kind of weird because it comes up more than once where you're hunting these down. All right. So that is, if I can dig my way back here. That is the end of the random events segment. Now we go to the initiative segment. And, well, that's just a matter of calculation. Again, I got a 4. Nobody's monarch's changed, so I'm at 190 times 4 is close to 800 for the Portuguese. They're ahead of the Spanish now, so this is going to be our ordering. Portugal, Spain, England's got 600. Right, a monarch. 3-pointer. They've got 600 and 240, 840, and yeah, obviously sometimes you do have to actually calculate it all out. And these guys are going to have 620, so we're going to see England and then France. And I got them set up right in the box. Great. I'm going to load this one up. Yes, we're not even done with the council segment, but I want to take some time to do the planning. And then I'm going to explain what I set up, and hopefully I'll have it marked out well enough, at least for this first time, for people to kind of be able to follow, at least for one country.